Benedict Arnold was born in Connecticut on January 14, 1741. While almost every American has heard of him and his treachery, many would likely be surprised to learn that Arnold was also one of the Revolution's greatest heroes. So where did it all go wrong? Today, we're going to take a look at how Benedict Arnold became America's most notorious traitor. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what other infamous historical figures you would like to hear about. Okay, you say you want a revolution? Well, we all want to change the world. When the winds of rebellion began to blow, many colonial Americans jumped on the revolutionary bandwagon. But Benedict Arnold didn't have to, because he was actually the guy pulling the bandwagon. Yes, Arnold was something of an early adopter when it came to the revolutionary spirit and the movement to throw off Britain's imperial shackles. As a successful merchant, Arnold lost a large portion of his profits to Britain's famously harsh tax acts. Not being particularly pleased to have his pocket picked, Arnold secretly joined the anti-British Sons of Liberty organization more than a decade before the Revolution officially began. After that, he set out to form his own militia. Known as Connecticut's Second Company of Foot Guards, their early preparedness meant that when the Revolution broke out, Arnold was able to arm his team up and get them on the battlefield almost immediately. Arnold had numerous victories in the Revolutionary War, but his greatest might have been his earliest. After his militia had connected with the other rebels, Arnold was ordered to recruit a regiment and take them to the highly valuable, though lightly defended, Fort Ticonderoga. He took co-leadership of Vermont's Green Mountain Boys and led them to an impressive victory. They actually took the fort without the loss of a single life. The feat was accomplished by a nocturnal attack, and the success was widely credited to the bold thinking of Benedict Arnold and his co-commander, Ethan Allen. The taking of Fort Ticonderoga was a big win, but Benedict Arnold was not about to sit back and rest on his laurels. While Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys celebrated their victory at the fort by getting drunk on confiscated liquor, Arnold was already on his way to the next conflict. It was at the port of St. John on Lake Champlain, and thanks to Arnold's swift movements, he was able to capture the port and several British vessels with a relatively small group of men. The victory gave the Americans complete control over the lake, which in turn gave them a true naval presence on the mainland. It was a massive win for the rebellious colonists, and it only happened because of Benedict Arnold's drive and initiative. Having earned a name for himself as a hero of the Revolution, Benedict Arnold quickly came to the attention of General George Washington. The commander of the Revolutionary forces had a special mission for the newly minted hero: take Quebec from the British. It was a tall order that wasn't made any easier by the fact that the mission came right at the onset of the winter of 1775, which made the expedition north longer and more difficult than usual. Arnold and his men did manage to reach Quebec City by New Year's Eve, but for a variety of reasons, including the weather conditions, their initial strike failed. Arnold did not want to give up and could only be convinced to abandon the attack when he got shot in the leg. By October of 1776, Arnold was already embarking on his next daring mission. This time he was taking a small fleet to Lake Champlain, which had fallen back under British control. The British were planning to invade New York, and it would be up to Benedict Arnold to stop them. Arnold and his troops fought fiercely, and when the battle turned against them, they burned their own ships so they could not fall into British hands. It sounds like a loss, but the determination shown by Arnold's forces delayed the British so long that they had to postpone the whole invasion of New York until after winter. No one knew it yet, but this delay would eventually prove to be a huge turning point in the American War for Independence. The British may have technically won the battle, but when it came to saving New York, Benedict Arnold was number one. Sometimes the best way to get a clear picture of who a historical figure really was is to look at what their enemies said and thought about them. As for Benedict Arnold, before he switched sides in the war, the British viewed him as the most enterprising and dangerous American general, and when it came to battle, there was no one they were more afraid to face. The level of respect the British held for Arnold was evident in the fact that some had nicknamed him the American Hannibal. This was a nod to the legendary Carthaginian general, considered by many to be the greatest military strategist in history, and not George Peppard from the A-Team, although one can assume Arnold did probably love it when a plan came together. In modern times, we think of generals as commanders who bark out orders to lower ranks from somewhere safely behind their own lines. But that was not how Benedict Arnold did things. Not being the type of commander to let others die on his behalf, Arnold went right out on the front line of the battle, putting his own life at risk on multiple occasions. Although he always managed to stay alive, he did in fact have several brushes with death. This included 2 occasions on which he was personally shot, and another 2 separate occasions on which his horse was shot right out from under him. Initially, Benedict Arnold was a true soldier of the Revolution with no plans to switch sides. But over time, as circumstances changed, he slowly began to reconsider his belief in the cause. While it would be nice to be able to say his doubts were founded in some deep-seated moral or philosophical principles about government and democracy, the truth is much more ordinary. Arnold was upset that despite his numerous victories and legendary courage, he kept getting passed over for promotion. The problem was that while his military career was exemplary, it wasn't the only thing Arnold was famous for. He was also well known for living a lavish lifestyle and being married to the daughter of a loyalist sympathizer. He felt these factors, which made him a bit of a political liability, were causing him to be purposefully overlooked. Then, when he was actually brought up on charges and was reprimanded for his personal lifestyle, Arnold had had enough. Benedict Arnold was known as a difficult man to get along with, and he often fought with his fellow officers. He eventually came to believe that his reputation had been smeared by those in the chain of command with whom he had personal clashes. One of the more notable Arnold haters was Horatio Gates, who fought with Arnold at the Battle of Saratoga. The two disagreed on tactics. When their differences of opinion rose to the level of an out-and-out argument, Gates had Arnold removed as his second-in-command. Arnold considered Gates an enemy from there on out and believed that Gates' opinion was a large factor in why he was frequently passed over for promotion. Everybody has that one friend who can't help but get into arguments all the time. For many of America's founding fathers, that friend was Benedict Arnold. As the Revolution ground on, it got to the point that no matter where he went or who he dealt with, Arnold made enemies. He had an extremely brash personality and had difficulty playing well with others. Moreover, he was the type to brutally criticize and harangue anyone who he disagreed with, while simultaneously accepting absolutely no criticism of his own positions. A famous story holds that when an officer named James Easton questioned Arnold's authority at Lake Champlain, Arnold answered him with a forceful kick. Easton was just one of many detractors whose collective opinions were likely responsible for holding back Arnold's advancement in the ranks. Benedict Arnold may have been one of the greatest military strategists in history, but when it came to handling money, he wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. Yes, one of the most significant reasons that Arnold turned traitor and sold his country out to the British was because he needed the money. Arnold had made some risky business ventures, and as the war went on, his debts mounted. This financial pinch was one of the reasons he was so upset about missing out on all of those promotions. So when the British came along with a big fat pile of cash in exchange for betraying the Americans, it had to be very enticing. Benedict Arnold had a lot of enemies, but there was one man who did more to drive him from the side of the Revolution than any other. His name was Joseph Reed. Like Arnold, Reed had a highly antagonistic personality, and this similarity caused the two men to loudly clash on multiple issues of great importance. Eventually, Reed became Pennsylvania's president of the Supreme Executive Council and decided to use his relatively powerful position to further his rivalry with Arnold. Reed launched an investigation into Arnold's conduct that proved highly embarrassing to the war hero. And when Reed later went as far as to file charges against Arnold, it was the last straw. If you think betraying your country to a foreign power would make you a great hero to your enemies, guess again. After he escaped to Britain at the end of the war, Arnold was socially shunned and couldn't even find a job. He took his son and left for Canada in 1785, but he didn't do any better there. He engaged in some business ventures, but they all failed. And when a crowd of Canadians took to burning Arnold in effigy, he packed right up and wisely moved back to London. He died June 14, 1801, at the age of 60. A popular story holds that Arnold's final words were, "Let me die in this old uniform in which I fought my battles. May God forgive me for ever having put on another." But historians say it's just a myth. So what do you think? Does any of this change your opinion about Benedict Arnold? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.